So as you all know, I am currently trying to get the Platinum Trophy in every single Call of Duty game. But if I'm being completely honest, I am absolutely over grinding for Call of Duty Platinums. And so in today's video, we are getting the Platinum Trophy for Another Crab's Treasure. Originally released in 2024, Another Crab's Treasure is developed by Aggro Crab, and even though it looks like a kid's game, it is anything but. Dude, why am I stuck on a crab that's not even Another Crab's Treasure is your typical Souls-like experience and is honestly so underrated that I feel like everyone should at least attempt this game once. We have a total of 39 trophies to collect, which includes the DLC, and it is rated at a 5 out of 10 for difficulty, requires only one playthrough, and will take approximately 25 hours to complete. Thankfully, there are no missable trophies in this entire game, and we only have 2 stages that we need to complete. Stage 1 is completing the first 99% of the game and just investigating it and completing it in any way that we see fit. And then Stage 2 is completing the last 1% to get the 100% completion and then get our Platinum Trophy. Now, after finishing Another Crab's Treasure, I can honestly say that this game is pretty underrated, and if you are looking for an easier Souls-like experience, this is a great place to start. So let's get into our Platinum Trophy journey. So our journey begins in the sanctuary of the Rock Tide Pools, and here we meet our main character, Krill. Krill is woken by a loan shark, and this shark claims that he is working for the Royal Duchess of Slack Tide and that they have now taken ownership of this tide pool. Krill is now forced to pay his outstanding taxes, however he has no money and the loan shark runs off with his shell. Krill, however, can get his shell back if he is able to produce the money that he owes, and this is basically the story of the entire game. And so from here, Krill then leaves the sanctuary of his tide pool and chases after the shark in order to try and get his shell back. Now, after a brief tutorial on how the game works, Krill then finds his rusted fork that he will use as his weapon throughout the game, and then we also come across the moon snail shells. And just like in other Souls games, these serve as your respawn points where you can regenerate your health and upgrade your character, but also as fast travel points throughout the game. So with the tutorial out of the way, we then set off through the shallows and then arrive at Slack Tide. However, we are not allowed in due to the fact that we are completely naked. The guards tell us that there is a whole heap of junk down over to the west, and if we go there, we can take a piece and use it as our shell. Now, Another Crab's Treasure has shells scattered throughout the game, and these are what you use as your shield, which allows you to block and parry enemies. Each shell has its own unique ability, and some will be heavier, which provides more defense, however you will be extremely slow, and others will be lighter, providing little defense but allow you to move extremely fast. However, after grabbing our first shell, we are then confronted by Nephro, the captain of the guard, and here is where we get our very first boss fight. Now, like most Souls games, you are literally thrown into the deep end, and the first boss fight is often the hardest, and Nephro was no exception. And let's just say, my first attempt didn't exactly go to plan. Okay. Okay, Jeez, okay. So yes, I managed to get around 2 hits in and then got absolutely destroyed by Nephro, and let's just say my second, third and fourth attempt weren't much better either. Okay, so I dodged into his thing. Oh my god, bro, you're kidding me. That aggro attack was so stupid. Bro. Bro. Now, like all good gamers, I wasn't just doing the same thing over and over, and each attempt I was progressively taking more and more health off of Nephro, and finally, on the 5th attempt, we beat him and popped our very first trophy of the game. Easy. Captain of the Guard. Now, after defeating Nephro, we are then introduced to the leveling system of this game, and if I can give you any piece of advice, it would be to focus on leveling up your vitality and resistance, as every other stat you can level up through either shells or also through forks and companions. Your vitality and resistance, though, are things that cannot be leveled through your companions, and these are the ones that I suggest you put a majority of your points into. So with our shell on our back, we then returned to Slacktide and had a meeting with the Duchess. Unfortunately, the Duchess cannot help us in any way and tells us that we need to pay our taxes in order to get our shell back. However, we work out a deal to go and find a missing platoon, and from there, we may be able to get our shell back. And so off we go to find the missing platoon. However, on our journey, we then come across a umami teacher. Umami is a special force that only the hermit crab can wield, and throughout the game we find different moves and upgrades as we go along. Now this part of the game is still linear as we are learning the basics and all of the skills that Krill can use, and then we finally reach the end of the line and come across our next boss. Now, the Polluted Platoon Pathfinder is probably the easiest boss in the game. He moves really slow, so it's easy to dodge his attacks, however his damage is super high. And let's just say, I wish I had a heart rate monitor on, because I absolutely clutched this on my first go. Yes, oh my god, we got him done first go. Polluted Platoon Pathfinder. And so after defeating the Polluted Pathfinder, we then came to the Moon Snails domain, and here we got to learn about our skill tree and how we can then level up Krill to become more powerful. We also learnt how to Shelleport, which is the game's name for teleporting between each Moon Snail domain, and we returned to the castle to present our findings to the Duchess. However, when we return to Fort Slacktide, we find that everyone is either dead or extremely aggressive and wants to kill us. We then return to the Duchess, however she vomits out a black goo substance and then tries to kill us. Now, the fight with the Duchess is actually kind of tricky, as she has the ability to hit you from long range with a ball on a chain, but then she can also shoot these vomit-like projectiles at you, which if you accumulate too much status effect from them, you will start to gradually lose health over time. Now, I didn't really have a tactic for this fight, except for when the Duchess threw her ball to run in, get a few hits, and then back off to avoid any status effects. Oh my god, yes. Clown, how are you? Tyrant of Slacktide. After defeating the Duchess, the loan shark then pokes his head out and says that he is going to sell our shell off. Krill is enraged that the loan shark is now going to sell his shell and then chases after him. The chase leads us through an area known as the Reef's Edge, and look, not much important happens here, but we do earn our next trophy for falling off the edge of the map. Passion. Oh my god, I've fallen off the edge, haven't I? You fell off. Fall to your death for the first time. Now we'll pretend like that never happened, but we then arrived at New Carsina, and this is the central point of the game. After asking a few of the locals for the location of our shell, we find that this local pawn shop owner has it. In New Carsina, the currency that is used to trade goods is microplastics. Krill just so happens to arrive on Trash Day, where a whole heap of microplastics come down from the surface and arrive in New Carsina to fill the pockets of the locals. However, in the midst of the chaos, a cereal box falls down from the surface and lands in the middle plaza. It is believed that the missing pieces on the back of this cereal box provide the location of where all the microplastic treasure is.
Aiken, this is part of a map! A map showing the way to a most valuable treasure, I say!
The commotion garners the attention of Roland. Roland is the owner of the Shellfish Corporation and is extremely wealthy, but is also as corrupt as they come. With the news of something valuable being available, he then sets his sights on finding where the location of the treasure is. The pawn shop owner then tells Krill that if he is able to find the treasure, he will return his shell to him free of charge. Krill, obviously overjoyed with excitement, says that he will find the treasure, which also garners the attention of Roland and his companion. And so this then sets the story for another Crab's Treasure, and from here on out, the game is a full open world experience. The hunt begins. Now, I was actually at the end of my stream at this point of the game, and so I decided to do a quick little investigation around New Carsina, and I popped a DLC trophy for entering into the museum. Yeah, I probably can't go in here. Look at this stuff. Take a look at the museum. So after returning to the main plaza area, we then asked the historian where he thinks the first piece of the map segment is. The historian tells us that the first piece of the map is located at the Grove, and we have to travel through the Sands Between in order to get there. Now, the Sands Between links all of the locations in Another Crab's Treasure together and is basically the travel point between each area. However, you have to stick to the path, otherwise a massive crab known as Pagarus appears and will basically kill you in one hit. And now, let's just say that my first attempt at fighting him didn't exactly go to plan, however, we will return to him later. How many attempts into Pagarus? This is literally the first time I've met him, bro. So after avoiding Pagarus, we then ran through the Sands Between and arrived at the Grove, and here we met a fellow treasure hunter named Firth. Now, Firth just happens to conveniently be at every single location that we are at, and he plays a pretty important role later on in the story. Now, in your typical Souls-like fashion, there isn't much progression in the story, and we just have to make our way through the level, fighting a few bosses, and then eventually getting to the map piece. The disease lycanthrope is basically a formality, and you'll probably beat him in your second or third go, as he is one of the easier bosses in the game. Nice, disease lycanthrope. However, high key, the intimidation crab is certainly a step up in difficulty. I found the best way to beat him was just using the sushi shells and its ability to then get health back at certain times, and then tanking all of his hits with blocking. Oh my god, we did it. Intimidation crab. So after defeating Heike, we gathered our first map piece, but before returning back to the town of New Carcinia, we had to continue on and fight the Master of the Village. The Master of the Village is Grovekeeper Topoda, and this is likely where you're going to hit your first roadblock in the game. I tried to defeat Topoda for about 45 minutes, but eventually gave up as I was just so underleveled. So in typical Souls-like fashion, I went around the map and just farmed a whole heap of enemies, and popped a trophy for finding a snail. Oh, I am speed. Discover one of the hidden snails. Let's just say that leveling up didn't really also help me either, so it was clearly a skill issue, and I returned to New Carcinia to drop off my map and then got directions for the next map piece. According to the locals, our next map piece was located in Flotsam Vale, a place full of this terrible gunk and disease. With the location of the next map piece in hand, I had some renewed vigour for this game and returned to Topoda determined not to be beaten. Yep, and that's me being greedy again. What? Dude, I actually do not know how he just hit me then. There is no way that he hit me on that second attack, man. I'm holding L1. My first few attempts were definitely not successful, and I could certainly feel some rage brewing inside of me. But I was determined to see this game through, and there was no way I was going to let a kid's game get the better of me. Yes, Grovekeeper. Come on. And so after defeating Grovekeeper Topoda, we then got access to the ability to upgrade our adaptations, which are powerful moves that we get from defeating bosses. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I didn't really use these moves as much as I think I should have in the gameplay, as I just found that they took too long and opened me up to taking on too much damage, particularly in boss fights. So with some renewed vigour and a spring in my step, I then ventured to the Flotsam Vale, and here the game decided to completely troll us. As you enter into Flotsam Vale, you are then confronted by Inkerton, who is Roland's right-hand man, and basically you are meant to die here in this boss fight. At the end of this fight, when I saw I had barely taken away a quarter of Inkerton's health, I was actually really worried that I was going to be stuck here for an eternity and I might never ever finish this game.
Not worth my time.
Interesting. Bro, I took like no health off of him then. Holy shit, man. Like no health off of him. But luckily for me, when we spawned in, we did not have to fight Inkerton again. Die there, yeah, clearly. Clearly we are meant to die there, yep. And so the Flotsam Vale worked exactly like the Grove in that we basically make our way through the level, fight a couple of bosses, and then eventually fight the main boss to get the map piece. The first boss that we encountered here in the Flotsam Vale was the Scuttling Sludge Steamroller, and this one is pretty easy and straightforward and will only probably take you a couple of attempts to get done. Yes, Scuttling Sludge Steamroller, let's go boys! Our second boss fight was the Ceviche Sisters, and again, this one is really easy. You can just tank all of the damage in your shell and then eventually pick them off one by one and get your next trophy. Ceviche Sisters. And so then we ascended to the top of Flotsam Vale and found our next map piece. Bro, how the f am I falling off every single thing in this mission? Now let's just say I did have some issues with the platforming in Flotsam Vale, and there were just holes in every single walkway, and I really don't know why the game was designed like this, but finally we made it to the top and got our next map piece. So we returned to New Carcinia and dropped the second map piece off, and of course this game couldn't be straightforward and revealed that Pegasus had the third map piece, and so we had to go and fight him to get it. No way. No, this guy can eat way. Oh my god. Stupid fish, man. You skillet thing. So I was pretty much resigned to the fact that I was now never going to be able to complete this game, and I was going to throw it into the discard pile and watch my completion percentage on PSN profiles continue to drop. But after around 90 minutes of grinding Pegasus, we finally had our breakthrough. Oh my god, I did it. They're ravenous. Oh my god, we got him done. With Pegasus defeated, we returned the final map piece and found out that the treasure is off the coast of the Flotsam Vale in the Gunk. The Gunk is this black toxic-like substance that has become present in New Carcinia since the introduction of trash and microplastics to the area. However, as we're about to head off to find the treasure, Roland and Inkerton come into town and steal the cereal box with the map on it and set off to find the treasure. So now we have to race against time to try to find the treasure before they do. We arrive at the docks of the Flotsam Vale, however we cannot power our boat, and Roland and Inkerton are already out trawling the entire Gunk area for the treasure. From here we then gain access to Scuttleport, and we have to just go through the area to find the adaptation that allows us to power up the battery on the boat. I honestly felt like this area of the map and just this section of the game was rather boring and very, very tedious. The platforming in this game is not great, and you have so much platforming to do here, and it just gets a little bit frustrating. But regardless, we got to the end and defeated the boss and then earned the electrical adaptation that allowed us to power the battery. Voltai the Accumulator, which is the boss that you have to fight at the end of this section, is also kind of just a bit dull and boring and just not a very good or interesting boss fight. You can't really do anything except tank its damage and then just hit it when it's not attacking you. The Accumulator.
Thanks for playing with me.
With the boat powered up, we then boarded Roland's barge, and here we find that they have found the treasure and are currently pulling it up from the surface. However, Roland tricked the group, and by boarding the boat, they are all on private property, and therefore Roland can use self-defense to attack them, and we begin our next boss fight. Now, considering that Roland is the main villain in this game, the boss fight is actually very, very easy. As long as you parry his attacks and then use heavy attacks to just keep increasing his stagger meter, you'll be able to get him done very easily, and I had absolutely no rage moments in this and beat him on my third attempt.
What we were made for! Animals, you and I!
Yes, Venture Cravatalist. After defeating Roland, he then surfaces with the treasure chest and Krill loses his absolute mind, and in rage he knocks the ship completely off the edge of the waterfall and down into the depths the group plunge.
I'm gonna get that
Krill, wait!
treasure!
Hold on to something, y'all!
We then wake up in the bottom of a trench, and here we find Firth, who tells us that the treasure chest was full of nothing at all valuable. And so after finding a few other crabs, Krill then realizes that they are in the bottom of the drain and there is a mysterious whirl that is around. This whirl tells Krill that there is a shell that has all the power of the ocean and that the person wielding it will be unstoppable. Krill finds out that this shell is from the old ocean times and would be extremely valuable and would help him to get his shell back. So he sets off to find a moon snail shell so that he can send all of his friends back to New Carcinia. However, in typical Souls-like fashion, this moon snail shell that we find is actually our next major boss fight. Yes, the false moon, come on! With Petrock defeated, the moon snail shell opens up and everyone is then transported back to New Carcinia. However, Krill stays behind in order to find this mysterious shell. Roland and Inkerton stay behind to find this mysterious shell. However, Roland's antics have annoyed Inkerton enough and he kills him.
Seabed, where I found you, you live.
And so this begins our next boss fight against Inkerton.
It's you.
The Inkerton boss fight is actually quite tricky and requires quite a lot of skill, and you need to be very good at the parrying mechanic. His attacks are extremely quick, and if you just try to tank the damage by holding L1, your shell will get broken nearly almost immediately, and so you need to really practice and hone your skill at parrying. Crab Hunter.
You bastard. Seems I'm as worthless as you.
Yes. With the help of Conch, Krill then finds two mysterious shells, and together the pair activate the elevator and down they go towards the whirl. Instead of finding the whirl, the pair arrive at the old ocean city, long lost and forgotten. And so just like in our previous cities such as Flotsam Vale and the Grove, we have to make our way through to the very end of this city and then fight the final boss. We arrive at the final moon snail shell of the game, and here I decided to finally upgrade Krill as much as I could and popped a few trophies. The Way of the Predator trophy. Way of the Predator. Way of the True Crab. After completing our upgrades, we then returned to the old ocean city, and here we fought Campshire the Bleach King as the final boss. This is the first boss that had two different stages, and your main goal in the first stage of this fight is to lose as little health as possible. The tactic that I found worked best was to stick just to the left side of his big claw, and then whenever he stamped his claw down, just jump in the air and you will avoid the wave attack, and then dodge every single other attack, and you should get through this stage losing little to no health at all. Alright, nice. Okay, let's go. Alright, so now where's this can? The second stage of this fight is completely different to the first in that Campshire Reborn now moves extremely quickly and you need to be very good at dodging and also parrying. If you can parry and time your attacks well enough, you will be able to build up Campshire's stun meter, and then this is what you just need to repeat over and over throughout the rest of the fight, and then you'll eventually be able to defeat him pretty comfortably. The only thing worth noting is that if you aren't good at the parrying skill and you would like to tank damage through your shell, Kamsha takes a lot of damage and you will end up breaking your shell quite a lot. Yes! Kamsha reborn. With Kamsha defeated, we could then travel down this toilet bowl, which would then take us to the bottom of the ocean, and here we would find the whirl. And so at the bottom of the ocean, we find the mysterious shell. However, Chitin, another hermit crab, appears, and he is under the influence of the gunk. Chitin is enraged and wishes to use the shell all for himself, and so here is our next boss fight.
Chitin! Oh my god!
Oh my god!
He's dead! You killed him!
Time, he says. The old idiot. Time is something we have none of.
And so this is where I began to lose my mind in this game. Dude, no way. Dude, no way. No way! Oh, what? No way. Dude, like, we're getting absolutely hammered here, man. I'm dead. Like, how? I can't dodge. Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell, man. Like, it's just stupid. Absolutely stupid. Dude, oh my god, it's every time, man. Bullshit. It's one of the biggest I've ever seen in a video game. Like, it's just dumb. Oh, I want to snap this ass over. Oh man, it's fine. Dude, why am I stuck on a crab that's not even there? Now, I have absolutely no idea what it was about this boss fight, but I could just not wrap my head around the first stage on just how not to lose health and die, and it was just so frustrating, and by the end of it, all I wanted to do was snap my controller. The second stage of the fight is really just a formality, and all you need to do is just dodge around and try not to lose any health, and then Priya will basically kill herself with all of her AoE attacks. But after around 2 hours of trying, I finally defeated Priya and got the trophy. Oh my god, I did it. The Ocean's Agony. Oh my god. Finally, fuck this game, man. So after defeating Priya, we then reached the point of no return for the final boss fight of this game, and so now it was cleanup time. In regards to the cleanup with this game, it is pretty straightforward in that all we have to do is go and find all of the optional bosses that we missed, and then complete all of the miscellaneous and collectible trophies. And so straight off the bat, I popped my very first trophy for completing the Way of the Hermit skill tree. Way of the Hermit. Next, I decided to tackle the optional bosses, and fortunately for me, I had only missed 3 in the entire game. The very first boss that I tackled was the Royal Shell Splitter, and considering that this is the very first optional boss you get to fight, I was extremely overpowered and killed him in about 4 hits. Royal Shell Splitter. Next on the list was the Curdled Carbonara Connoisseur, which is just an absolutely ridiculous name, and this one is hidden off the trail behind a waterfall in the Flotsam Vale. Now, the Connoisseur does hit rather hard, so you do need to be careful about taking damage. However, considering I was really overpowered, I was able to beat him fairly quickly and comfortably to pop my next trophy. Get him. Curdled Carbonara Connoisseur. And then finally, our last boss was the Consortium, again located in the Flotsam Vale, and this boss is just so weird. In order to kill this boss, you don't actually hit it, you need to hit the ropes on the side of the cart, which then opens up its insides, and then once they are all broken, you will have defeated it The Consortium isn't a very hard boss, you just have to avoid all of its attacks and then just gradually take damage off each rope as you go, and then you will be done. The Consortium. With all of the bosses now completed, I then returned to New Carcinia in order to figure out how many more shells I needed to collect. Here in New Carcinia at the Shell Desires shop, you can purchase a whole heap of shells, but also you can buy shell insurance so that every time you die, you respawn in with this exact shell. For many of you, you'll probably have popped this earlier on in the game if you bought shell insurance, however I just never ever got around to doing it, and so popped my next trophy right here. In Good Claws. Now, I was actually pretty happy with myself because at this point in the game, I had found 59 out of the 69 possible shells. 8 of these last 10 shells needed to be bought at the shop, so I saved up enough microplastics, headed over there and then bought them, and then our final 2 were hidden throughout the world. Now, in order to make my collectible run as smooth as possible, I also had 2 adaptations that I needed to learn, and I paired these together with the shells and then popped all 3 trophies along the way. Well adapted. Oh wow, okay. Shells like. Find a certain hero's helmet. Nice, alright, let's give me the next one. Shell Seeker. And so the last main trophy that we needed to get done was upgrading our fork to its true potential, and so I had done 3 upgrades in my playthrough and had 2 left, and these are achieved by using stainless relics that you find throughout the game. Fortunately for me, I had only missed 2 stainless relics throughout the whole game, and so this was pretty quick to just mop them up and then upgrade my fork to level 5 and pop my next trophy. Make it shine. And then finally, before fighting the last boss, I had to go into the accessibility settings and equip Krill with a gun for his shell and then shoot a crab and kill it with 1 hit. Now, I believe that this gun will kill bosses in 1 hit as well, or it will take a fair bit of damage off of them, but it honestly completely ruins the fun of playing this game. This kills the crab. And so that marked the end of the cleanup part of this game, and we had completed everything that we needed to, and we're ready to progress and fight the final boss. Now, I was pretty glad to get to the end of this game, as it had been a rather frustrating journey up to this point. So as we began the cutscene, Krill was trying to save Chitin from dying. However, in the background, Firth snuck in and stole the shell. Firth wants to use the shell to create more trash and therefore make everyone in New Carcinia richer. However, what this trash will actually do is it will create more gunk around New Carcinia and then pollute the entire ocean, which will then kill all of the residents. After being whisked away in a teleport, Krill arrives on Trash Island, and here he confronts Firth for the shell. Now, the Firth fight was actually my favourite in the entire game and pretty epic. To beat Firth, you have to master all of the skills that you have been learning and practicing throughout your gameplay, and it includes parrying, blocking, and dodging. The fight has 2 stages, and the first stage is really just a formality. As long as you can parry and block, you will get through this pretty comfortably and lose minimal to no health at all. The second stage is a little bit trickier in the sense that Firth can throw these bombs at you. He is also flying in the air, and he can also create these underwater tornadoes that can suck you up and create significant damage and stun you. The goal with this section of the fight is to just dodge the tornadoes and the explosive bombs, and then just parry him whenever he uses his tentacle attacks to build up his stun meter and attack him whenever he is close by. This second stage of the fight does require quite a lot of patience and will likely take you anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes, purely based on the fact that Firth is just never within range, and you do need to spend a lot of time dodging away from all of his other attacks. Now, I didn't really have any issues with the Firth fight, and it really only took me about 4 or 5 attempts, and then I finally defeated him and popped our next trophy.
No,
Oh my God,
Krill, wait!
yes.
Don't put that on!
Yes. Avatar of Waste, oh my god, yes.
I think I get...
With the power of the shell, Krill then kills Firth. However, the shell is broken in this process, and then all of the trash floats down to New Carcinia. Wow. We then return to New Carcinia, however our old shell is lost and the prawn refuses to give it back to us, so what Krill does is attacks him and kills him, and this pops our very last trophy and then our platinum. Finishing what I started. Fully carcinized.
What word comes to mind when you think of the Earth?
Now, I have absolutely no idea why Krill didn't do this at the start of the game, as all of this could have just been completely forgotten and we would have returned home with our shell way earlier and I wouldn't have had to have gone through the frustration of the prior fight at all. But overall, the Platinum Trophy for Another Crab's Treasure was actually quite enjoyable, and I would recommend this if you are looking for a little bit of an alternative Souls-like experience. Now, the DLC trophies will take you approximately another 10 hours to complete, but honestly, I just did not have any motivation after completing this game to finish this, so please don't get mad at me in the comments. As always guys, if you could please leave a like and comment down below if you've gotten to the end of the video, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.